My parents left me. I've been starving for days, said the little girl, but a millionaire saw her situation and decided to take action. Comment with what you thought of this story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and let me know what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The morning sun painted the colonial stones of Willow Creek in gold as the first vendors began to set up their stalls at the market that took place every Tuesday and Friday in the historic center of the New England town. The aroma of fresh bread mingled with the scent of ripe fruit and the morning chatter of merchants preparing for another day's work. Mrs. Peterson, a grey-haired lady with a warm smile, was carefully arranging her tomatoes and lettuce when she noticed a small figure slowly approaching her stall. It was a girl of only 4, with dirty, patched-up clothes, tangled brown hair, and large eyes that reflected a hunger that went far beyond the need for food. The child stopped in front of the stall, staring at the colorful fruits displayed with such care. Her small fingers fidgeted nervously with the hem of her torn shirt while she swallowed hard, trying to gather the courage to speak. She asked the woman with a weak but determined little voice if she had any leftover fruit, offering to help carry the crates. Mrs. Peterson felt her heart tighten upon hearing that voice, laden with hope and despair. "Of course, my dear," she said, asking if she wanted a banana. The girl's words came out like a cutting whisper, but they echoed loud enough to be heard that her parents had left her, that she had been starving for days. The girl's confession caused all the surrounding conversations to pause for a moment. Mrs. Peterson knelt to be at the child's level, her eyes filling with tears. She asked what she meant, where her parents were. The girl didn't know. The aunt who had been looking after her had left the night before and hadn't come back. She had taken her suitcase and said she had to fend for herself now. At that moment, Arthur Kensington was approaching the stall to do his usual morning shopping. At 52, the businessman was known throughout Willow Creek as the owner of the largest construction company in the region, a serious and methodical man who controlled every detail of his business with military precision. His routine was rigorously organized. Wake up at 5:30, exercise for an hour, shower, put on one of his impeccably pressed suits, and go out to buy fresh fruit before heading to the office. Arthur had always had a need to control absolutely everything around him. Since childhood, he had organized his toys by color and size, made detailed lists of his tasks, and couldn't stand the unexpected. This trait had made him a successful businessman, but also a man who kept an emotional distance from people, preferring the safety of numbers and contracts to the unpredictability of human relationships. When he heard the girl's words, something inside him broke. His entire armor of professional coldness crumbled before that small figure who was begging for food with the dignity of someone who still held out hope of finding kindness in the world. He surprised himself by approaching and asking how old she was. 4, the girl replied, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "My name is Lily." Arthur observed the details that his problem-detecting eye immediately caught. The clothes weren't just dirty, they were inadequate for the chilly New England morning. The shoes were torn and too big for her feet. There were dried tear marks on her cheeks, but her eyes maintained a spark of life that touched him deeply. He repeated her name, Lily, testing it. "It's a pretty name," he said, asking if she was very hungry. The girl nodded, biting her lower lip to hold back the tears that threatened to fall again. Mrs. Peterson, who was watching the scene with a heavy heart, handed the girl a ripe banana and a peach. "Take these, my dear," she urged. "Eat slowly." Lily took the fruits with reverence, as if they were precious treasures. She thanked the kind lady. Arthur felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, an urgent need to protect someone other than himself. His organizing mind immediately began to formulate plans. to think of practical solutions for the problem before him. He knelt to the girl's level and asked if she knew where she lived. She did. It was in a small house near the old church on the hill, but there was nothing to eat there, and her aunt had taken the key when she left. He asked if there was anyone else who could take care of her, like grandparents or other relatives. Lily shook her head negatively as she carefully peeled the banana, not wanting to waste any of it. There was only Aunt Agnes. She said her parents went far away and would never come back. Arthur exchanged a worried look with Mrs. Peterson, who was discreetly wiping away the tears running down her face. The situation was more serious than he had initially imagined. "Listen, Lily," he said, making a decision that would forever change the course of his controlled and predictable life. "How about you come with me for a real breakfast, with warm bread, milk, and jam?" The girl's eyes lit up, but they soon filled with suspicion. She asked if he was a policeman. Aunt Agnes had said that if the police found her, they would take her to a bad place. No, he assured her, he wasn't a policeman. Just someone who couldn't stand to see a child go hungry. He held out his hand to her, promising not to hurt her. He just wanted to give her food and a safe place to stay until they found someone from her family. Lily looked at the outstretched hand, then at the serious but kind face of the man before her. There was something in his eyes that reassured her, a sincerity she had learned to recognize even at such a young age. She asked if she could take Mrs. Peterson's fruit with her. "Of course you can," Mrs. Peterson replied, wrapping some extra fruit in a paper bag. "And take this too, my dear." Lily took Arthur's hand with confidence, and he felt as if he were holding something extremely fragile and precious. For the first time in years, his obsessive need to control everything was replaced by something much larger, the need to protect that helpless child. As they walked through the cobbled streets of Willow Creek, Arthur had no idea that his impulsive decision to help an abandoned girl would trigger a series of discoveries that would shake his entire understanding of family, sacrifice, and love. The man, who had always known exactly what to do in any situation, was about to discover that the most important problems in life cannot be solved with spreadsheets and contracts. Arthur's house was in the most affluent neighborhood of Willow Creek, an imposing two-story building with well-kept gardens and a wrought iron gate. When he opened the main door holding Lily's hand, he was greeted by the aroma of fresh coffee and the sound of hurried footsteps coming from the kitchen. Catherine Kensington appeared in the hallway, drying her hands on a dish towel, her blonde hair tied in an elegant bun and a navy blue dress that highlighted her always impeccable posture. At 48, she maintained the classic beauty that had captivated Arthur 25 years ago. But her eyes revealed a deep sadness that she hid behind polite smiles and superficial conversations about Willow Creek's social life. "Arthur, you're home early today," she began to say, but stopped abruptly when she noticed the child next to her husband. "Who is this girl?" "Catherine, this is Lily," he explained. "She was alone at the market, starving. I brought her for some breakfast with us." Catherine's face contorted into an expression that mixed surprise, concern, and something that looked like panic. "Arthur, you can't just bring a strange child into our home. What if her parents are looking for her? What if there are legal problems?" Lily, sensing the tension in the air, hid behind Arthur's legs, her large eyes watching the woman who seemed not to like her presence. She was abandoned, Catherine. The person who was caring for her disappeared last night and left her alone, without food, without anything. Arthur placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. "I couldn't leave her on the street." Catherine closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. Her life had been carefully constructed to avoid exactly this type of situation, emotional complications that could open wounds she had been fighting to keep closed for years. "Are you hungry, miss?" Lily asked in her shy little voice, looking at Catherine with a mixture of hope and fear. The innocent question struck Catherine like a stab wound. The word miss echoed in her mind, reminding her of all the times she had dreamed of hearing a child call her mom. At 48, after 15 years of failed attempts to get pregnant, she had given up the dream of having children, building emotional walls to protect herself from the constant pain of seeing other women with their children. Yes, I'm making breakfast, she replied, her voice softer. Do you like bread with butter? Lily's eyes lit up. I do, but I haven't had warm bread in a long time. Catherine felt something stir in her chest, a tenderness she had buried long ago. Come on then, let's eat. In the large modern kitchen, Lily sat at the polished mahogany table, looking around in admiration. She had never seen such a beautiful house, with a big refrigerator, a shiny stove, and cabinets that seemed endless. Your house is very pretty, she commented, accepting the glass of warm milk Catherine offered her. Thank you, Catherine replied, watching how the girl drank the milk carefully, not spilling a single drop. There was something touching in the way Lily appreciated every small gesture of kindness, as if she wasn't used to being treated well. Arthur poured himself some coffee, while observing the interaction between his wife and the girl. He knew Catherine well enough to see that despite her initial reservations, she was being touched by Lily's presence. Lily, can you tell me more about this aunt who was taking care of you? He asked, sitting down at the table. The girl swallowed a piece of bread before answering. Aunt Agnes. She wasn't my real aunt, but she made me call her that. She would get angry when I made noise and always said I was a lot of trouble. And how long did you live with her? A long time, since I was very little. Lily swung her legs, which didn't reach the floor. She said my parents left because they didn't want me anymore. Catherine felt a rage grow in her chest. How could someone say something so cruel to such a small child? I'm sure that's not true, she said, surprising herself with the firmness of her voice. The aunt said my parents were very young and had no money to take care of me. That's why they left me with her. Arthur exchanged a significant look with Catherine. Lily's story was full of gaps that needed to be investigated. Lily, do you know your parents' full names? The girl shook her head. Aunt Agnes never talked about them. She just said they went far, far away. And do you have anything that belonged to them? A photo? A toy? No. Aunt Agnes said they didn't leave anything for me. The ensuing silence was heavy with meaning. Arthur, with his analytical mind, was already beginning to formulate hypotheses about Lily's true situation. The story didn't make sense in several places, and he suspected there was much more involved than a simple abandonment. Mister, Lily said suddenly, are you going to take me back to Aunt Agnes's house? Why? Do you want to go back? No, the answer came out quick and honest. It was very cold there and I was always hungry. And Aunt Agnes yelled at me a lot. Catherine's heart ached. She yelled at you. Why? Because I wet the bed sometimes or because I dropped something. She said I was a burden and too much trouble to take care of. The child's words echoed in the kitchen like a silent accusation against all the adults who had failed to protect her. Arthur clenched his fists, controlling the anger he felt towards this Agnes who had mistreated a defenseless child. Lily, Catherine said softly, you are not a burden. You are a very special girl, and you deserve to be treated with kindness. The girl looked at Catherine in surprise, as if she had never heard kind words about herself. Do you really think so, miss? I do. Catherine stood up and got more bread for Lily. And how about you stay here with us today? We can give you a nice bath, find you some clean clothes, and think about what to do from now on. Arthur watched his wife with admiration. Despite all her fears and reservations, Catherine was opening her heart to this child in need. He knew how much it cost her, considering all the pain she carried from not being able to have her own children. Can I really stay? Lily asked, hardly believing the offer. For today, yes, Arthur replied, and we'll see what we can find out about your situation. After breakfast, Catherine took Lily to the guest suite bathroom. As she filled the tub with warm water, she watched the girl explore the room with childish curiosity. "What a big tub!" Lily exclaimed. "Is it just for me?" "It's just for you," Catherine confirmed, testing the water temperature. "It's going to be a very nice bath." When Lily took off her dirty clothes, Catherine had to hide her shock at seeing how thin the child was. It was clear she hadn't been properly fed for a long time. Her ribs were visible under her pale skin, and her little arms were too thin for a 4-year-old. "Miss Catherine," Lily said, getting into the warm water with a sigh of pleasure, "why are you being so nice to me?" The question caught Catherine off guard. How could she explain to a 4-year-old that she saw in her the opportunity to exercise the maternal love she could never give to the children she never had? "Because every child deserves affection and care," she answered simply, carefully soaping Lily's tangled hair. Meanwhile, in the living room, Arthur was on the phone with Robert Miller, his lawyer and longtime friend. "Robert, I need your guidance on a delicate situation. I found an abandoned child at the market this morning." "Abandoned how, Arthur?" "The person who was caring for her simply disappeared last night, leaving the girl alone and without food. She's only 4 years old. You need to contact Child Protective Services immediately. You can't just take the child home without following the legal procedures." "I know that, Robert, but I couldn't leave her on the street starving. What is the correct procedure?" "First, you need to file a police report about the abandonment. Then contact CPS to report the situation. They will assess the case and decide what the best alternative is for the child." Arthur carefully wrote down the instructions. His organizing mind was already drawing up a plan of action, but a part of him feared what the authorities might decide about Lily's future. "Robert, is there any possibility that if she really has no family, we could become responsible for her temporarily?" "It's possible, yes. You would have to go through a psychosocial evaluation and meet a series of requirements. But Arthur, are you sure you want to get involved in this? It's a huge responsibility." Arthur looked towards the stairs from where the sound of laughter was coming, Catherine and Lily playing in the bath. It was the first time in years he had heard his wife laugh for real, with genuine joy. "I'm sure, Robert, this child needs us, and I think we need her too." When Catherine came down with Lily an hour later, Arthur hardly recognized the girl. Clean and wearing one of Catherine's old t-shirts that served as a little dress, Lily looked like a completely different child. Her brown hair shone after being washed, and there was color in her cheeks. "Look how beautiful she is," Catherine said, clearly proud of her work. Lily twirled to show off the improvised outfit, smiling in a way that lit up the whole room. "I look like a princess." At that moment, looking at the transformed girl and his wife's genuine smile, Arthur knew that his life had changed forever. It didn't matter what legal obstacles or complications might arise. He would do whatever was necessary to protect Lily and give her the family she deserved. But what none of them knew was that, at that exact moment, in another part of Willow Creek, a desperate woman was waking up in a hospital bed, asking for a girl who had disappeared from her life. 3 days had passed since Lily arrived at the Kensington's house, and the family's routine had completely transformed. The girl woke up every morning at 6, the time she used to be forced to get up at Agnes's house, but now she found Catherine preparing a hearty and loving breakfast instead of the screams and complaints she was used to. Arthur had religiously followed Robert's instructions, filing a police report and contacting Child Protective Services. The social worker responsible for the case, Ms. Davies, a 40-year-old woman with experience in child abandonment situations, had visited the house the day before and had been impressed with the care Lily was receiving. "It's rare to see a child adapt so quickly to a new family," Ms. Davies had commented, watching as Lily played peacefully in the backyard while she talked with Catherine about cake recipes. On that Thursday morning, Arthur was in his office at the construction company when his cell phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but he decided to answer. "Hello, is this Mr. Arthur Kensington?" A weak and tired female voice asked. "Yes, this is he. Who is speaking? My name is Sarah Foster. I'm calling from the regional hospital. I heard you found a little girl named Lily." Arthur's heart raced. "How did you know that?" "Agnes, the woman who was taking care of Lily. She was here at the hospital yesterday. She said the girl had disappeared and that someone had taken her." Sarah's voice trembled. "Sir, I need to see Lily. She is my daughter." Arthur's world seemed to stop for a moment. "Your daughter?" But Agnes said Lily's parents had abandoned her. Agnes lied. Sarah started to cry on the other end of the line. "I left Lily with her temporarily because I had to work night shifts to pay the bills. Agnes was a neighbor and offered to take care of her for some money, but when I went back to get my daughter, I found out she had moved and no one knew where she had gone." Arthur got up from his chair, pacing nervously around the office. "How long ago did this happen?" 2 months. 2 months. I've been desperately looking for my daughter." Sarah's voice was filled with suffering. "I worked as a cleaner at a cleaning company, doing overnight shifts to earn more. I thought I was doing the best for Lily, saving money to give her a better life. And why are you only now getting in touch? Why didn't you go to the police sooner?" "I did. I filed a police report, but they said Agnes had a document saying she was temporarily responsible for Lily. She forged my signature on papers I never saw." Sarah sobbed. "I was desperate, searching all over Willow Creek when I had an accident at work." "What kind of accident?" "I fell from a ladder in the building where I was working late at night. I hit my head and broke a few ribs. I've been in the hospital for a week, and only yesterday did I manage to convince someone to help me look for Agnes." Her voice was getting weaker. "Mr. Kensington, please, I just want to see my daughter. I just want to know if she's okay." Arthur closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the situation. For 3 days, he had clung to the idea that Lily could be his adopted daughter, that he could offer her the life she deserved. But now he discovered she had a mother who loved her and had been deceived. "Where are you hospitalized?" "Regional Hospital, room 237. Sir, can you bring Lily to see me?" "Just for a few minutes." "I'll talk to my wife and call you back," Arthur said, hanging up the phone with trembling hands. He immediately called home. Catherine answered with the cheerful voice she had recovered in recent days. "Arthur, Lily just helped me make cookies. Do you want to talk to her? Catherine, I need you to sit down. I have important news." The serious tone of her husband's voice made all the joy disappear from Catherine's voice. "What happened?" Lily's mother called. "She's in the hospital and wants to see her daughter." The silence on the other end of the line was prolonged. When Catherine finally spoke, her voice was just a whisper. "Her mother, but..." Agnes said she had been abandoned. Agnes lied. Lily's mother's name is Sarah. She works as a cleaner and has been looking for her daughter for 2 months. She left Lily temporarily with Agnes while she worked night shifts. Catherine felt as if the floor had disappeared from under her feet. For the past 3 days, she had allowed her heart to open in a way it hadn't in years. She had daydreamed about the possibility of finally having a daughter, of giving all the maternal love she had saved for so long. And now, what are we going to do? We're going to take her to see her mother. It's the right thing to do. But Arthur, what if she wants to take Lily away immediately? The girl has barely gotten used to us. Catherine, she's the biological mother. She has rights over her daughter." Catherine closed her eyes, fighting back tears. I know it's the right thing. It's just that in these 3 days, I felt like a real mother for the first time in my life. When Arthur arrived home an hour later, he found Catherine in the kitchen, carefully explaining to Lily that they were going to visit someone very special in the hospital. "Who is it, Miss Catherine?" Lily asked, licking a finger full of cookie dough. Catherine looked at Arthur, seeking support. He knelt in front of the girl. "Lily, remember how you always ask about your parents?" "I remember. Aunt Agnes said they had gone away. Well, we found out Aunt Agnes wasn't telling the truth. Your mommy didn't go away. She's been looking for you for a long time." Lily's eyes widened. "My mommy? My real mommy? Your real mommy? She's in the hospital because she got sick, but she's better now and really wants to see you." Lily was silent for a long moment, processing the information. Then she looked at Catherine with concern. "If I go see my mommy, will you not be my family anymore?" The question broke Catherine's heart. "Lily, your mommy is your blood family. She loves you very much and has missed you. But I like you too," Lily said, running to hug Catherine. "You take good care of me." The drive to the hospital was silent. Lily was in the back seat, looking out the window with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. It had been so long since she had seen her mother that she could barely remember her face clearly. In room 237, Sarah was sitting on the bed, her left arm in a cast and bandages on her forehead. She was a young woman, no more than 28, with straight brown hair and dark eyes that shone with anxiety. When she saw Lily enter the room, she immediately began to cry. "Lily, my princess!" The girl hesitated for a moment, observing the woman who was her mother, but who had become almost a stranger. Then, slowly, she approached the bed. "Mommy, were you looking for me?" "Every day, my love. Every day since you disappeared." Sarah reached out with her good arm to touch her daughter's face. "You're so beautiful, so well cared for." Lily allowed her mother to touch her, but maintained a certain distance. "Aunt Agnes said you went away because you didn't want me anymore. That was never true, never ever." Sarah looked at Arthur and Catherine with gratitude. "Thank you for taking such good care of her. I can see you treated her with kindness." Catherine swallowed hard before speaking. "She's a very special girl. It was a pleasure to care for her." "Mommy," Lily said hesitantly, "are you going to get better? Will you be able to take care of me now?" The question everyone feared had finally been asked. Sarah looked at her own condition. She was unemployed since the accident, had no home of her own, and her recovery would still take a few weeks. "I really want to take care of you, my princess. But I'm still recovering and—" She looked at Arthur with hesitation. "I don't know if I can give you everything you deserve right now." It was then that Arthur made a decision that would surprise everyone. "Sarah, how about we offer a temporary solution? You can recover peacefully, and when you're well, we can talk about Lily's future. In the meantime, she can stay with us. You would do that? Even knowing she's not. That you're not." "We're doing it because we care about Lily," Catherine said firmly, "and because a mother has the right to recover properly before taking on responsibilities." Sarah began to cry again, but this time from relief. "I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank us." "Just focus on getting well," Arthur replied. When they left the hospital, Lily was confused but visibly relieved. In the car, she asked the question that would define the next few days. "Mr. Arthur, do I have two families now?" "For now, yes," he replied, looking in the rearview mirror at the girl who had completely changed his life. "Two families that love you very much." But what none of them knew was that Sarah had omitted a crucial detail about Lily's past, a secret that would change everything when it came to light. A week had passed since Lily's reunion with Sarah, and the dynamic in the Kensington house had become even more complex. Sarah was being discharged from the hospital that morning, and Arthur had offered to pick her up and take her to a small apartment he had rented for her in the center of Willow Creek, close to their house to facilitate Lily's daily visits. Catherine was in the kitchen, preparing a special lunch to welcome Sarah when Lily approached, carrying a drawing she had made during the morning. "Miss Catherine, I made a drawing of my family," the girl said, holding out the paper. Catherine dried her hands on her apron before taking the drawing, and what she saw left her speechless. Lily had drawn 4 figures: a woman with long hair, who clearly represented Sarah, a woman with short hair who was obviously Catherine, a tall man who was Arthur, and herself in the center, holding hands with everyone. "It's very beautiful, dear," Catherine said, fighting back emotion. "You drew all of us together." "It's because I have a big family now," Lily explained naturally. "Mommy Sarah, Mommy Catherine, and Daddy Arthur." The way the girl had naturally created 2 maternal roles in her life deeply touched Catherine, but also worried her. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that families don't exactly work that way? When Arthur arrived with Sarah, the tension in the air was palpable. Sarah was still fragile, with her arm in a cast and careful movements because of her bruised ribs, but her eyes shone when she saw her daughter running towards her. "Mommy, you're back!" Lily shouted, carefully hugging Sarah. "I am back, my princess." "And now I'm going to live close to you," Sarah replied, kissing the top of her daughter's head. During lunch, Sarah observed every detail of the interaction between Lily and the Kensingtons. It was impossible not to notice the genuine affection that existed between them. The way Catherine automatically cut Lily's food into small pieces, how Arthur joked with her between bites. "You are very special people," Sarah said suddenly. "I will never be able to repay what you've done for Lily." "There's nothing to repay," Catherine replied. "Anyone would have done the same." "That's not true, and you know it." Sarah lowered her voice. "Most people would have just handed her over to the authorities and moved on with their lives." Arthur observed Sarah's expression and realized there was something she wanted to say, but was hesitating. "Sarah, is there anything else we need to know about Lily's situation?" The direct question made Sarah visibly nervous. She looked at her daughter, who was innocently playing with the vegetables on her plate, then at Arthur and Catherine. "There is," she finally admitted. "Something I should have told you from the beginning, but I was afraid of how you would react." Catherine felt her stomach tighten. "What is it?" "Lily. Lily is not my biological daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur slowly put his fork down on the plate, while Catherine held her breath. "What do you mean?" Arthur asked. "I found her when she was a baby, about 6 months old. She was in a basket on my doorstep with a note and some clothes." Sarah started to cry. The note just said, "Please take good care of her. I can't be with her now, but I hope to come back one day." Catherine looked at Lily, who continued to eat quietly, oblivious to the adults' conversation. "And you never found out who left her there?" "Never. It was a very rainy night in June 2019. I was living alone in a simple little house, working as a maid for several families. When I heard the baby crying at the door, I didn't hesitate to take her in." "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" Arthur asked. "Because—" Sarah hesitated, wiping her tears. "Because I had lost a baby a few months before. I was 6 months pregnant when I had a miscarriage. I was devastated, alone. And when I saw that child, it was like a gift from heaven." The revelation hit Catherine like a punch to the gut. She understood Sarah's pain perfectly, the desperate need to have a child to love. "So you registered her as your daughter?" Arthur asked. "Yes, I managed to get a late registration, said I had given birth at home and was only now seeking to register her. It was easier back then, especially in small towns." Sarah looked at Lily with evident love. "But in my heart, she has always been my real daughter. I took care of her as if she were my own flesh and blood." "And the note? Do you still have it?" "I do. It's kept in a box with her first clothes." Sarah wiped her nose. "I always thought that one day the biological mother might come looking for her, and I wanted to have everything preserved." Arthur got up from the table, walking to the window. His mind was processing all the implications of this revelation. "Sarah, this changes everything. If Lily was abandoned, there could be a biological family looking for her to this day." "I know," Sarah whispered. "That's why I hesitated so much to tell. I'm afraid of losing her." Catherine looked at the girl who had come into their lives so unexpectedly. Lily has the right to know the truth about her origins. She's still too little, Sarah protested. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that she has been abandoned twice? She wasn't abandoned twice, Catherine corrected firmly. She was loved twice by brave women who did the best they could under the circumstances. At that moment, Lily looked up from her plate. What are you talking about? The 3 adults looked at each other, none knowing how to answer. It was Sarah who took the initiative. We were talking about how special you are, my princess. How you brought joy to many people's lives. I am special, Lily agreed with childish naturalness. Miss Catherine always says so. After lunch, while Lily played in the yard, the adults gathered in the living room for a more serious conversation. What do we do now? Sarah asked. Do you want to look for her biological family? Arthur thought carefully before answering. I think first we need to talk to our lawyer about the legal implications, and also with the psychologist who is seeing Lily. Psychologist? Sarah was surprised. Yes, Catherine explained. We thought it was important for her to have professional support during this transition. Dr. Patricia Evans has been helping us a lot. You really thought of everything, Sarah murmured, visibly moved. Sarah, Arthur said gently, I want you to know that this doesn't change our willingness to help. In fact, it might make it even more important that we work together for Lily's well-being. What do you mean? If there's a biological family out there that might be looking for her, we need to handle this as carefully as possible. And if there isn't anyone, then we need to ensure that Lily has the stability and love she deserves. Catherine spoke up. Regardless of what we discover, Lily will always have a place in our hearts and in our home. That night, after Sarah had gone to her new apartment and Lily was asleep, Catherine found Arthur on the porch, looking at the stars. What are you thinking about? She asked, sitting down next to him. About how our life has changed in 2 weeks, how a child can turn everything upside down and make you feel more complete than ever. Are you afraid of what we might discover about her biological family? Arthur sighed. I am, but I also know that doing the right thing isn't always easy. And for Lily, the right thing is to discover the whole truth about her origins. And if we find her family and they want her back, then we'll have to accept it. But until then, we'll give all the love we can to this girl. Catherine rested her head on her husband's shoulder. I never thought I would be able to love someone so intensely in such a short time. Me neither. But Lily has that power. She taught us that family isn't just about blood. As they talked, neither of them noticed the shadow in Lily's bedroom window. The girl had woken up thirsty and overheard part of the conversation. Although she didn't fully understand what biological family meant, she understood that there were more mysteries about her story. Lying in bed, looking at the moon coming through the window, Lily whispered to herself, I want all my family to stay together forever. But fate had more surprises in store for that unconventional family. And the next revelation would come from where they least expected it. Monday morning brought a discovery that would change everything again. Dr. Patricia Evans had scheduled a special session with the whole family to discuss the revelation about Lily's origins. But even before the appointment began, Arthur received a call that left him perplexed. Mr. Kensington, my name is Margaret Croft. I'm your father's sister, Vincent Kensington's. Arthur frowned. His father had passed away 15 years ago, and he barely remembered his younger sister who had moved to Chicago when she was young. Aunt Margaret, it's been so long. How did you get my number? Through the construction company. Arthur, I need to talk to you urgently. It's about a very delicate situation involving a child. Arthur's heart raced. What kind of situation? I'd rather not talk on the phone. Can I come to Willow Creek today? It's extremely important. Arthur looked at Catherine, who was watching the conversation with growing curiosity. Of course, Aunt. Do you remember the address? I do. I'll be there late this afternoon. When Arthur hung up, Catherine approached him. Who was that? My Aunt Margaret, my father's sister. I haven't spoken to her in over 10 years. She said she needs to talk urgently about a situation involving a child. Do you think it could have something to do with Lily? I don't know, but the timing is too suspicious to be a coincidence. At that moment, Sarah arrived to pick up Lily for their morning walk, which had become a routine since she left the hospital. The girl ran to hug her adoptive mother, radiant with joy. "Mommy, Sarah, are we going to feed the fish in the town square pond today?" "We are, my princess. I even brought some old bread I asked for at the bakery." Watching the affectionate interaction between Sarah and Lily, Catherine felt a pang of something she didn't know if it was jealousy or maternal protection. In the last few days, she had begun to question her role in the girl's life. Was she just a temporary caregiver, a second mother? What would happen when this whole situation was resolved? During the session with Dr. Evans, Lily played in the children's corner while the adults talked in low voices. The revelation that Lily was found as a baby hasn't changed her behavior, the psychologist observed. She continues to show secure attachment to all of you. But how does this affect her long-term development? Sarah asked, clearly worried. Children are more resilient than we imagine. The important thing is to maintain emotional stability and honesty appropriate for her age. When the more specific questions about her origins come, it's crucial to answer truthfully, but in a way she can process. "And if we find the biological family?" Arthur inquired. "It depends a lot on how that family is introduced to her and what their intention is. Lily has already formed strong bonds with the three of you. Any drastic change could be traumatic." Dr. Evans observed Lily trying to build a tower with colored blocks. "See how she's playing? She's creating stable structures, organizing the pieces by color and size. This indicates that she feels secure in her current environment." In the late afternoon, an elegant woman in her 50s knocked on the Kensington's door. Margaret had well-cut grey hair, expensive but discreet clothes, and carried a leather bag that she didn't let go of for a moment. "Arthur," she said, hugging her nephew with visible emotion, "you look just like Vincent at your age." "Aunt Margaret, this is my wife Catherine," Arthur introduced. "And this is Lily," Margaret completed, staring at the girl playing on the sofa. Her hands trembled slightly. "My God, do you know Lily?" Catherine asked, puzzled by the reaction. Margaret sat down heavily in an armchair without taking her eyes off the child. "I don't know her specifically, but I lost a daughter 4.5 years ago." The ensuing silence was thick with tension. Sarah, who was present for the visit, unconsciously squeezed Lily's hand. "What do you mean lost?" Arthur asked carefully. "She was born in January 2019. She was a beautiful, healthy, perfect baby." Margaret began to cry. "But I was in a very complicated situation at the time." "What kind of situation?" "I was involved with a married man, Richard Sterling, a well-known businessman in Chicago. When I found out I was pregnant, he pressured me a lot to not carry the pregnancy to term." Catherine sat on the edge of her chair. "And what happened?" "I refused. I ran away to a small town to have the baby away from him. But Richard found me and started threatening me, saying he would destroy my life and also harm the child if I didn't obey. And then I made the biggest mistake of my life." Margaret sobbed. "I left my daughter in a house where I knew she would be well cared for on a rainy night in June 2019. She was only 6 months old. The date struck Sarah's mind like a lightning bolt. June 2019, June 15th, specifically. It was a Tuesday. I remember it perfectly." Sarah turned pale. "That was exactly when I found Lily on my doorstep." Margaret finally took her eyes off Lily and looked directly at Sarah. "Are you the woman who took care of my daughter all these years?" The revelation exploded in the room like a bomb. Lily, realizing she was being watched intently, stopped playing and looked at the adults. "Why is everyone looking at me?" she asked innocently. Arthur stood up, running his hands through his hair in despair. Aunt Margaret, are you saying that Lily is your daughter? I'm saying it's a very strong possibility. The age matches, the date matches, and... She hesitated, looking at the girl again. She has exactly the same eyes I had at her age. Catherine looked closely at Lily and then at Margaret. There really were similarities. The shape of the face, the color of the eyes, even some gestures were similar. Do you have any proof? Sarah asked, clearly panicking at the possibility of losing the daughter she had raised. Margaret opened her bag and took out a yellowed envelope. I have the note I left with her, and also, I have this. She showed a small baby bracelet with the name Hope engraved in delicate letters. That was the name I had chosen for her, Margaret explained. Hope, because even in the difficult situation we were in, she represented hope for me. Sarah covered her mouth with her hands. The bracelet. There was a bracelet with the clothes when I found Lily. Do you still have it? I do. It's stored with all her other things. Arthur sat down, trying to process all this information. So Lily is my cousin. She is your cousin and my daughter, Margaret confirmed, the tears now flowing freely. And for 4.5 years, I have lived with the remorse of having abandoned my own daughter. Why didn't you come back for her sooner? Catherine asked. Because Richard made me believe it would be better for her to grow up without me. He said that if I tried to get her back, he would harm both me and her. Margaret wiped her tears. Only after he moved abroad last year was I able to start looking for her. Lily approached Margaret with the natural curiosity of children. Ma'am, why are you crying? Margaret looked at this child who was her daughter, but whom she didn't really know. I'm crying because I'm very happy, dear. Why? It was Sarah who answered, her voice choked with emotion. Because this lady is your real mother, Lily. The girl looked at Margaret, then at Sarah, then at Catherine. In her 4-year-old mind, the concept was becoming confusing. So now I have 3 mothers, she asked naturally. The innocent question cut the hearts of all the women present. Each had loved Lily in a different but equally intense way. Sarah as the adoptive mother who raised her with love, Catherine as the mother of her heart who welcomed her in a difficult time, and Margaret as the biological mother who never stopped loving her despite the forced separation. For now, yes, Arthur replied gently. 3 mothers who love you very much. But even with all the emotion of the discovery, a question remained in the air. What would happen now? Would Margaret want to take Lily away? How do you explain to a 4-year-old that her life was about to change once again? And most importantly, where was Richard Sterling, the man who had forced Margaret to abandon her own daughter? The days following Margaret's revelation were filled with almost unbearable tension for everyone involved. Lily, with the natural adaptability of children, had accepted having another mother in her life as if it were the most normal thing in the world. But the adults struggled to find a balance between rights, feelings, and what was best for the girl. Margaret had decided to stay in Willow Creek indefinitely, renting a room at the historic downtown inn to be close to her daughter. Every morning, she would appear at the Kensington's house with carefully chosen gifts for Lily, children's books, dolls, clothes, in a desperate attempt to make up for the 4 lost years. That Thursday, the eve of Willow Creek's summer festival, Catherine watched from the kitchen window as Margaret taught Lily how to make paper crafts in the yard. The sight of the girl laughing and calling Margaret Mommy Margaret made her heart ache in a way she couldn't define. Are you okay? Asked Sarah, who had arrived for lunch with them, as had become customary. I don't know anymore, Catherine admitted, drying her hands on her apron. I look at them together and see how much Lily looks like Margaret. It's obvious they are mother and daughter by blood. Does that bother you? Catherine sighed deeply. It bothers me to think that maybe I'm just a temporary piece in her life. That when all this is resolved, she'll go away with Margaret, and I'll go back to being nothing. Sarah approached and gently touched Catherine's arm. You will never be nothing to Lily. She loves you in a very special way. How can you be so generous? Margaret showed up and basically claimed the girl you raised for 4 years. Because I understand her pain, Sarah replied simply. Any mother understands. Imagine living for 4.5 years, knowing you had to abandon your own daughter out of fear. That must have destroyed her inside. At that moment, Arthur arrived home from work early, wearing a worried expression that immediately caught the attention of the two women. Did something happen? Catherine asked. Robert called me. We have a problem. Arthur looked out at the yard where Lily was playing happily. Richard Sterling is in Willow Creek. Catherine's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Apparently, he found out that Margaret found her daughter. Robert discovered that he arrived in town last night and is staying at the most expensive hotel downtown. Sarah turned pale. Is that dangerous? We don't know his intentions yet, but considering he was the one who forced Margaret to abandon Lily, his presence here can't be a good thing. Catherine called Margaret and Lily inside, making up the excuse that it was time for lunch. When they were all gathered in the living room, Arthur broke the news to Margaret, who immediately panicked. No, 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 she murmured, pacing back and forth. He can't be here. He can't know where Lily is. Mommy Margaret, why are you nervous? Lily asked, sensing the adult's agitation. It's nothing, my love. Mommy's just a little worried about some grown-up things. But Lily, with the sharp intuition that develops in those who have gone through difficult situations, knew something was wrong. She approached Catherine and whispered, Mommy Catherine, is that bad man going to take me away? The question broke Catherine's heart. How could a 4-year-old be so perceptive? No one is going to take you away. My dear, we're going to protect you. Promise? I promise. That afternoon, while Lily napped in her room, the adults gathered to discuss the situation. Margaret shared more details about her abusive relationship with Richard. He's obsessed with control, she explained. When he found out I was pregnant, he first tried to convince me not to have the baby. Then, when he realized I was determined, he started planning how to use the situation to his advantage. What do you mean? Arthur asked. Richard is married to the daughter of an important politician, but their marriage is just for show. He thought he could keep me as a mistress and raise our child in secret, completely controlling our lives. And when you refused, he became violent. He threatened me, said that if I didn't obey, he would destroy not only me, but also do something terrible to the baby. Margaret trembled at the memory. That's when I realized I had to protect Hope, Lily, in any way I could. Sarah spoke up. Why is he here now? What does he want? I don't know, but I know Richard well enough to know he doesn't give up easily. If he's here, he has a plan. The answer came sooner than they expected. At 5 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang, and when Arthur opened the door, he found an elegant man in his late 50s, with well-cut grey hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Arthur Kensington, my name is Richard Sterling. I believe we need to talk. Arthur did not invite him in. About what? About my daughter. Lily is not your daughter, said Margaret, appearing behind Arthur. Her voice trembled, but there was determination in it. Margaret, my dear, Richard said with a condescending tone. Of course she's my daughter, and I've come to get her. You have no rights over her, protested Sarah, who had also approached. Richard took some papers from the inside pocket of his jacket. Actually, I do. These are documents proving my paternity and a court order granting me custody. The silence that followed was devastating. Arthur took the papers and quickly examined them. They seemed legitimate, with official stamps and signatures. How did you get this? Asked Margaret, her voice almost a whisper. I have my resources, as you know, and I also have rights as a biological father. Richard looked around the house with disdain. The child needs financial stability. quality education, a prosperous future. I can offer all of that. She already has love, which is more important than money, said Catherine, finding the courage to speak. Love doesn't pay for private school, college, or guarantee a bright future, Richard replied coldly. Where is she? No one answered. The tension in the air was palpable. It doesn't matter. The court officers will be here tomorrow at 9 in the morning to handle the custody transfer. I suggest you prepare the girl for the move. You can't just show up and take a child you don't know, protested Arthur. I can, and I will. Richard addressed Margaret directly. You made your choice 4 years ago. You abandoned our daughter because you were weak and cowardly. Now it's my turn to do what's best for her. Richard's words hit Margaret like daggers. She began to cry, not from sadness, but from a rage that had been building for years. I didn't abandon our daughter out of cowardice. I abandoned her because you threatened me and made me believe it was the only way to protect her from you. Different versions of the same story, said Richard indifferently. The fact is, now I'm going to give her what she deserves. After he left, despair took over everyone. Margaret cried on the sofa, Sarah paced nervously around the room, and Catherine went upstairs to check if Lily was still sleeping, as if it were the last time she could do so. We have to do something, said Arthur, picking up the phone. I'm calling Robert right now. But when Robert analyzed the documents over the phone, the news wasn't good. Arthur, these documents look legitimate. If he really is the biological father and has a court order, legally you can't stop him. There has to be something we can do. I can try to challenge the order, argue that the abrupt change would be harmful to the child, but it will take time, and I can't guarantee I'll succeed. That night, none of the adults could sleep. Knowing it might be their last night with Lily, each spent special time with her. Sarah read stories until she fell asleep. Margaret sang lullabies she had dreamed of singing to her daughter. Catherine carefully organized the girl's clothes, as if it could somehow protect her, and Arthur sat in the armchair next to Lily's bed, watching her sleep and silently promising that he would find a way to protect her, even if it cost him everything he had. But what none of them knew was that Richard had made a crucial mistake by coming to Willow Creek. A mistake that would be discovered in the coming hours and would completely change the course of the whole situation. It was 5:30 in the morning when Arthur's phone rang, waking the whole house. On the other end of the line, Robert's voice was filled with a mixture of urgency and relief. Arthur, I need you to come to my office right now and bring Margaret. I've discovered something about Richard's documents that could change everything. What did you discover? I can't talk over the phone, but it's important, very important. An hour later, Arthur and Margaret were sitting in Robert's office, while Catherine and Sarah stayed at home with Lily, trying to maintain the morning routine's normality so as not to scare the girl. The documents are fake, Robert announced bluntly. Completely forged. Margaret covered her face with her hands, relieved but still trembling. Are you sure? Absolutely. I spent all night checking with contacts in the Chicago judiciary. There is no court order granting custody to Richard Sterling. More than that, he never even filed for paternity recognition. How did you find out? Arthur asked. Something in the document seemed strange to me last night. The signatures, the stamps. Anyway, I called in some favors and found out that the judge who supposedly signed the order was on vacation on the date of the document. So, we can stop him from taking Lily? We can and we will. I'm already filing a motion to expose the forgery. But there's more, Margaret. She looked up, still fearful. Richard is being investigated in Chicago for other forgeries. Apparently, he's been using forged documents in various business situations. If we can prove that he tried to use false documents to kidnap a minor, he will face serious criminal charges. But how much time do we have? Arthur asked. He said the officers are coming at 9 in the morning. Robert smiled for the first time since they started talking. They're not coming because they don't exist. It was all part of his act to intimidate you. Margaret began to cry, but this time from relief. So Lily is safe? For now, yes. But we need to act quickly to ensure Richard doesn't try something more drastic when he finds out we know the truth. When they returned home, they found a scene that warmed everyone's hearts. Lily was in the kitchen, standing on a chair, helping Catherine make heart-shaped pancakes for breakfast. Sarah was setting the table, and the three were chatting excitedly about the summer festival that would happen that night. "Daddy Arthur! Mommy Margaret! We're making heart-shaped pancakes!" Lily shouted happily. "How delicious," Arthur replied, kissing the top of the girl's head. "And what if today was a special day to celebrate our family?" "What do you mean?" Lily asked, curious. "What if we all went to the summer festival together tonight? You, me, Mommy Catherine, Mommy Sarah, and Mommy Margaret." Lily's eyes sparkled. "All my mommies together? And you too?" "All together," he confirmed, exchanging a meaningful look with Catherine. During breakfast, Margaret told Sarah and Catherine about the discovery of the false documents. The relief was visible on everyone's faces, but Sarah asked the question everyone was thinking. And now, what happens with Lily? Who gets legal custody of her? "It's complicated," Margaret admitted. "Technically, I am the biological mother, but I abandoned her. Sarah raised her for 4 years, but has no official adoption papers. You two welcomed her and gave her stability, but you also have no legal status." Catherine shifted uncomfortably in her chair. It was the question that had tormented her for days. What was her real place in Lily's life? "Maybe it's time we talked about a solution that's best for Lily," Arthur said carefully. "What kind of solution?" Sarah asked. "A shared custody? Something legal that recognizes that Lily has several people who love her and want to take care of her?" Margaret looked at her daughter, who was playing happily, oblivious to the adults' conversation. "Would you accept that? Sharing legal responsibility for her?" "If it's what's best for Lily, yes," Catherine answered without hesitation. "She has already taught us that family is not about possession, but about love." "And you, Sarah?" Margaret asked. Sarah took a long time to answer. She was the woman who had the most to lose in this situation. She had raised Lily as her own daughter for 4 years. She was the one the girl called Mommy first. But looking at Lily laughing as she smeared her face with jam, she knew what the right answer was. Lily deserves to have this whole network of love around her. If you are willing to accept that I continue to be her mother too, then yes. That afternoon, as they prepared for the festival, something unexpected happened. Lily was in her room choosing which dress to wear when she asked to speak to all her mommies at the same time. "I want to tell you something important," she announced with adult-like seriousness. The 3 women sat on the bed curious. "I know you're worried about who will be my real mother," Lily said, "but I've already decided." "Decided what, my love?" Sarah asked. "The 3 of you will be my mothers. Each of you is my mother in a different way." She looked at Sarah. "Mommy Sarah taught me that I am loved even when things get hard." Then she looked at Catherine. "Mommy Catherine taught me that I can be happy and that I deserve good things." And finally at Margaret. "And Mommy Margaret taught me that sometimes people do difficult things because they love very much." The 3 women looked at each other, moved by the wisdom of that 4-year-old child. "And Daddy Arthur?" Catherine asked. "Daddy Arthur taught me that family is whoever takes care of us," Lily replied simply. The Willow Creek Summer Festival was in full swing when the unconventional family arrived at the main square. Lily wore a country-style dress that Margaret had bought, new shoes that Sarah had chosen, and ribbons in her hair that Catherine had lovingly tied. "Look at all the people," Lily exclaimed, amazed by the colorful decorations, the food stalls, and the lively music. It was a tradition in Willow Creek that during the summer festival, families participated in the traditional square dance. When the master of ceremonies announced the dance, Lily immediately wanted to participate. "But I need a partner," she said thoughtfully. "I'll dance with you," Arthur offered. And will my mothers dance too? Arthur looked at the three women and had an idea. How about we form a special group, a family dancing together? And so, for the first time in the history of the Willow Creek Summer Festival, a family with three mothers, a father and a daughter danced the traditional square dance. The audience watched, moved by this demonstration of unconditional love, and many commented that it was the most beautiful family they had ever seen. But not everything was resolved. As they danced, Richard watched from a distance, hidden among the stalls. When he realized his plan had failed and that everyone was happy together, his expression became dangerous. If he couldn't have Lily through the means he had planned, he would find another way. And this time, he wouldn't underestimate this family that dared to challenge him. That night, while Lily slept exhausted but happy after the festival, the adults talked about the next legal steps. Robert had managed to get a restraining order against Richard, but they knew the danger had not completely passed. Men like him don't give up easily, Margaret warned. He will try something else. Then we'll be prepared. Arthur said with determination, this family protects its members. But what none of them knew was that the next threat would not come from Richard directly. It would come from someone much closer, someone they would never suspect could want to harm Lily. 2 weeks had passed since the summer festival, and life seemed to have found a harmonious rhythm in Lily's extended family. The mornings began with the girl waking up at the Kensington's house, having breakfast with Catherine and Arthur, then walking to Sarah's apartment to play in the afternoon, and finally visiting Margaret at the inn before dinner. It was a routine that worked perfectly for everyone involved. That Tuesday, Catherine was organizing some old papers in the office when she found a folder she didn't remember seeing before. Inside, there were documents from Arthur's construction company from years past, including employee files from 2018 and 2019. Curious, she flipped through the papers when a name caught her attention. Agnes Miller. The woman who had mistreated Lily had worked at Arthur's construction company as a cleaning assistant. How strange, Catherine murmured to herself, reading the details of the employment file. The file showed that Agnes had been fired for just cause in May 2019, exactly 1 month before Lily appeared on Sarah's doorstep. The reason for dismissal was noted in small letters: misappropriation of funds and employee belongings. Catherine felt a chill. Could it be a coincidence that Agnes had worked for Arthur right around the time Lily was abandoned? And more importantly, how did she know where Sarah lived to leave the baby specifically on her doorstep? When Arthur arrived for lunch, Catherine confronted him with the discovery. "Did you know that Agnes worked at your construction company?" she asked, showing him the file. Arthur's face turned pale as he read the document. "No. I had no idea. Agnes Miller is a common name. I never made the connection." "Arthur, this can't be a coincidence. She worked for you, was fired for theft, and a month later a baby appears on the doorstep of one of your employees." "Did Sarah work for me too?" Arthur asked, confused. Catherine picked up another folder. It was here too. Sarah Foster, hired as a cleaner in January 2019, worked the night shifts. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in a disturbing way in Arthur's mind. "Do you think Agnes knew where Sarah lived because they worked together?" "I think there's much more to this story than we imagined." That afternoon, they decided to confront Sarah with the discovery. They found her in the small park where she used to take Lily to play on the swings. "Sarah, we need to talk about something important," Arthur said, while Lily played in the sand with other children. "Of course. About what?" "About Agnes. We discovered that she worked at my construction company at the same time as you." Sarah's face contorted in a genuine expression of surprise. "Agnes worked there? I never knew that. You never met during work?" "No, I only worked at night, from 11 at night to 6 in the morning. I rarely saw other employees." Catherine sat next to her on the bench. "Sarah, is there anything about that night you haven't told us? About how Agnes could have known where you lived?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching Lily play. Finally, she sighed deeply. There is one thing I never told anyone, she admitted. The night before I found Lily, something strange happened at work. What? Arthur and Catherine asked almost simultaneously. It was a very busy night at the construction company. There was an important meeting the next day, and I was cleaning the offices when I heard voices coming from Mr. Kensington's office. Arthur frowned. It was a Sunday night. I wasn't there. I know. That's why I found it strange. There were two people talking, a woman and a man. The woman was crying a lot. Did you manage to see who it was? Not clearly. It was dark and I hid because I didn't want to get into trouble. But I heard part of the conversation. What did you hear? Sarah looked nervously at Lily, making sure the girl wasn't listening. The woman was saying she couldn't hide it anymore, that she couldn't raise the child in those conditions. The man was saying she had to get rid of the problem once and for all. Catherine felt a coldness in her stomach. And then they left. But I noticed the woman had forgotten a bag in the room. I went to give it to her, but when I got to the parking lot, I saw her putting something in a car. It looked like a baby basket. The silence that followed was heavy with terrible implications. Sarah, Arthur said carefully, would you be able to recognize the woman's voice if you heard it again? I think so. It was a distinctive voice, a bit hoarse, like someone who cries a lot. At that moment, as if fate were orchestrating everything, Agnes appeared in the park. She was walking quickly on the other side of the square, apparently not having noticed the group on the bench. That's her, Sarah whispered, pointing discreetly. That's the woman who was at the construction company that night. The revelation hit Arthur like a lightning bolt. Agnes not only knew Sarah from work, she had used that information to specifically choose where to leave Lily. But why would she do that? Catherine asked. If she was helping Margaret hide the child, why did she then keep Lily? Unless, Arthur said slowly, she wasn't helping Margaret, unless she was working for Richard. The idea was so disturbing that none of them wanted to believe it, but it made a sick kind of sense. Richard could have hired Agnes to kidnap Lily and keep her hidden away from Margaret. We have to tell Margaret this, Catherine said. When they met that night at the inn where Margaret was staying, the revelation about Agnes's involvement with Richard left her devastated. So, from the beginning, she murmured, Lily was being used as a pawn in a game I didn't even know was happening. Why would Richard do that? Sarah asked. What would be the advantage of keeping Lily hidden? Control, Margaret replied bitterly. Richard was always obsessed with control. If he couldn't have me the way he wanted, at least he could ensure that our daughter grew up away from me, perhaps even without knowing I existed. And when Agnes disappeared with the money and abandoned Lily, Arthur asked, he probably stopped paying her, or she decided it wasn't worth the risk anymore. Lily, who was sleeping on the inn's sofa, stirred restlessly. Even asleep, she seemed to feel the adult's tension. What do we do now? Catherine asked. Do we look for Agnes to confirm our suspicion? She's disappeared, Margaret said. When she found out Lily had been found, she probably fled the city. Then we need another way to prove Richard's involvement, Arthur said. It was then that Robert appeared at the inn with news that would change everything once again. He was visibly agitated and carried a folder full of documents. Sorry to bother you at this hour, but I found out something about Richard that you need to know immediately. What is it? Arthur asked. He's not just a corrupt businessman. Richard Sterling is being investigated for a network of kidnapping and illegal sale of babies. The silence in the room was absolute. Even Lily stopped stirring on the sofa. The Chicago police contacted me today after they learned about the situation here. Apparently, Richard is involved in a scheme that kidnaps babies from vulnerable mothers and sells them to wealthy families who can't adopt legally. Margaret covered her mouth in horror. Are you saying he was going to sell our daughter? I'm saying that was probably the plan from the beginning, to make you believe you had to get rid of the baby, kidnap the child through Agnes, and then sell her. But then why did Agnes leave Lily on Sarah's doorstep? Catherine asked. Maybe she developed some kind of conscience, or maybe she realized she was being investigated and decided to get rid of the evidence. The magnitude of the situation was becoming clear to everyone. Lily had not just been abandoned, she had been the victim of a failed kidnapping attempt. And now? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Now we have to protect Lily at all costs, Arthur said with determination, because if Richard finds out where she is... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood that the danger was far from over and that their unconventional family was about to face the greatest test of their union. The discovery about the baby kidnapping ring completely changed the family's dynamics. Robert had advised them to temporarily move to another city, but Arthur refused to flee Willow Creek with Lily. Instead, he decided they would protect the girl in their own home, installing security cameras and hiring discreet surveillance. Lily noticed that something had changed in the adults' behavior, although they tried to maintain normality. Her free walks through the streets of Willow Creek had ceased, and there was always an adult nearby, watching her every move. "Why can't I play alone in the yard anymore?" she asked one morning, as Catherine helped her get dressed. "It's just for now, my love. The adults are sorting out some important things," Catherine replied, avoiding details. That day, something unexpected happened. Margaret was taking Lily to a routine appointment with Dr. Evans when she noticed a black car following them discreetly through the streets of the historic downtown. Her heart raced as she recognized the tactic. Richard always used this type of psychological intimidation. Instead of going straight to the office, Margaret decided to test her suspicion. She entered a craft shop in the historic center, feigning interest in the local pieces while watching through the window. The car stopped on the other side of the street, and she could see a male figure at the wheel. "Mommy Margaret, why are we looking at these dolls?" Lily asked, pulling her hand. "I'm just seeing if there's a special doll for you," Margaret replied, keeping her composure. Discreetly, she took her phone out of her pocket and photographed the car's license plate. When they left the shop, the car followed them again. Margaret made a risky decision. Instead of going to the office, she drove directly to the Willow Creek police station. "Mommy Margaret, this isn't the way to Dr. Evans's," Lily observed. "We're just making a quick stop first, my love." At the police station, Margaret reported the situation to Chief Miller, an experienced man who had already been briefed by Robert on the case. When she showed him the photo of the license plate, the chief frowned. "This car was rented yesterday in Chicago. I'll have the renter's identity checked." Half an hour later, the answer came. The car had been rented by an employee of a private investigation firm that provided regular services to Richard Sterling. "He's having you watched," the chief confirmed. "Probably trying to map out your routine to plan something." Margaret felt a chill down her spine. "Can you do something? I can increase patrols in the area and instruct the investigator to keep his distance. But legally, as long as he doesn't make direct threats, I can't arrest him." When they arrived at the Kensington's house, Margaret told Arthur and Catherine what had happened. The news that they were being watched put everyone on high alert. "We can't underestimate Richard anymore," Arthur said. "He clearly won't give up. So now what? We live like prisoners in our own home?" Catherine asked. It was Sarah who offered an unexpected suggestion. "What if we use the fact that he's watching us against him?" "What do you mean?" Margaret asked. "If he's mapping our routine, we can create a fake routine. Make him believe Lily is in one place when she's actually in another." Arthur considered the idea. "It would be risky, riskier than letting him take the initiative," Sarah argued. That late afternoon, they put the plan into action. Catherine left the house carrying a hooded child, actually a doll the size of Lily wrapped in clothes. She drove to Sarah's apartment, obviously being followed by the same black car. Meanwhile, Arthur slipped out the back of the house with the real Lily, taking her to Catherine's sister's house on the other side of town, where no one would imagine she would be. The plan worked perfectly. The investigator spent the whole night watching Sarah's apartment while Lily was safe miles away. But the next morning, the situation took a turn no one had anticipated. Agnes appeared at the Kensington's door. Catherine almost didn't recognize her. The woman who had mistreated Lily was visibly thinner, with worn clothes and a desperate expression on her face. "I need to talk to you," Agnes said urgently. "It's about Richard Sterling. You have the nerve to show up here after everything you've done?" Catherine responded angrily. "I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But if you don't do what I've come to propose, he will succeed in taking Lily." Arthur, who had been called home urgently, arrived to find Agnes sitting nervously in the living room, drinking a glass of water with trembling hands. "What do you want?" he asked directly. "I want to help you stop Richard, but I need guarantees." "What kind of guarantees?" "That you won't turn me over to the police if I tell the whole truth." Catherine spoke up. "After how you treated Lily, you're in no position to make demands." "I know," Agnes admitted, starting to cry. "I know I did terrible things, but you don't understand. Richard threatened me. He said if I didn't obey, he would do something worse to the child." "Tell the whole truth," Arthur ordered. "Richard hired me to kidnap Margaret's daughter right after she gave birth. The plan was for me to take the baby to Chicago, where she would be sold to a family who couldn't adopt legally. So why did you bring her to Willow Creek?" "Because when I saw that little baby, something in me broke. I had lost my own child years before, and I couldn't hand her over to those monsters." Agnes sobbed. "But I was also afraid of Richard, so I decided to hide Lily until I found a way to protect her." "Why did you leave her on Sarah's doorstep specifically?" "Because I knew Sarah was a good person. We worked together for a few months, and I saw how kind she was to everyone. I thought she would give Lily a better life than I could." Catherine sat down, processing the information. "So why were you cruel to her later? Why did you mistreat a child you had tried to protect?" "Because Richard found me," Agnes whispered. "A year later, he found out where I was and started blackmailing me again. He said that if I didn't keep Lily hidden and under control, he would do something terrible to her and to me, and you obeyed by mistreating a 3-year-old child. I was desperate. He said that if the child drew too much attention, if anyone asked questions, he would send people to make her disappear forever." The silence in the room was deafening. Agnes continued. "That's why I was so strict with her. I thought if I kept her quiet and invisible, Richard would forget she existed." "But you ran off with the money and abandoned her," Arthur reminded her, "because I found out Richard was planning something terrible. He was going to send people to get Lily, for real this time. I ran because I thought if I disappeared, he would lose her trail. And now, why did you show up here?" "Because I heard he's in Willow Creek, and I know exactly what he's planning." Agnes took a crumpled paper from her pocket. "Richard has hired men to kidnap Lily tomorrow during the Founders' Day parade. He knows you'll take her because it's a tradition in Willow Creek. He'll use the crowd as cover." Arthur took the paper. It was a detailed map of the parade route, with points marked in red. "These are the locations where he will try to grab her," Agnes explained. "I have information because I still have contact with some people who work for him." "Why should we believe you now?" Catherine asked. "Because," Agnes said, looking directly at her, "because even after doing terrible things, I never stopped loving that girl. And if something happens to her because of me, I won't be able to live with it." At that moment, Margaret and Sarah arrived at the house, and when they saw Agnes, the tension in the air became almost palpable. But when Agnes repeated her story and showed the map of Richard's plan, even they realized that she might be their only chance to protect Lily. "What do you want in exchange for the information?" Margaret asked. "I want a chance to ask Lily for forgiveness, and I want to help you put Richard away for good. It was an unlikely alliance, but everyone realized it might be their only hope of keeping Lily safe and ending the threat of Richard Sterling once and for all. The Founders' Day parade in Willow Creek was one of the most important events on the town's calendar. The colonial streets filled with colorful carpets made of flower petals and painted sawdust, creating true works of art that the solemn procession would walk over. That was exactly why Richard had chosen this day. In the crowd of locals and tourists, it would be easier to execute his plan. Agnes had spent the night at the Kensington's house, sleeping on the living room sofa under Arthur's discreet watch. In the morning, she helped the family devise a counterplan that could neutralize Richard's threat once and for all. "He will try to grab Lily at 3 specific points," Agnes explained, showing the map again. "At the exit of the old church on Main Street when the parade makes its first stop, and at the town square where the ceremony ends. How can we use this information to our advantage?" asked Robert, who had arrived early to coordinate the strategy with Chief Miller. "Simple," said Arthur. "We'll give him exactly what he expects to see, but not where he expects it." The plan was complex, but clever. They would create 3 simultaneous situations. Catherine would participate in the parade carrying a baby, actually the same doll they had used the day before. Margaret would be strategically positioned in the town square, apparently waiting for the parade's arrival. And Sarah would take the real Lily to a completely different location, Dr. Evans's family farm, 15 miles from Willow Creek. "And me?" asked Agnes. "You'll be where Richard can see you," said Chief Miller. "You'll confirm to him that the plan is working, while we document everything to use as evidence." At 8 in the morning, as the church bells of Willow Creek began to chime, announcing the start of the preparations, the plan went into action. Sarah left through the back of the house with Lily, who was excited about what she believed was a special trip to the countryside. "Why aren't we going to see the parade, Mommy Sarah?" the girl asked in the car. "Today we're having a different adventure, my princess. We're going to a farm with real animals. Will there be ponies? There will be ponies, cows, and even chickens." Meanwhile, at the old church, Catherine mingled with the faithful preparing for the procession. She wore a discreet dress and a veil that partially covered her face, carefully carrying the doll wrapped in blankets. From a distance, any observer would believe it was a mother with her baby. Margaret positioned herself in the town square, pretending to arrange flowers for one of the decorative carpets. Her heart was racing, but she maintained her composure, knowing that every move was crucial to the plan's success. Agnes walked deliberately through the streets of the historic downtown, making sure she was seen by Richard's men. At 9:30, she headed to the cafe, where she had arranged to meet Richard himself, a meeting that was being recorded by hidden devices provided by the police. "I thought you wouldn't come," Richard said when Agnes sat at his table in the back of the cafe. "I'm here, aren't I? And I brought the information you wanted. Will the child be in the parade?" "Yes. The whole family will participate. They're very religious." Agnes took a deep breath, following the script they had rehearsed. "She'll be with the blonde woman, Catherine." "Perfect. And the points we marked on the map?" "Still valid. The easiest will be on Main Street during the first stop. There's always more movement there." Richard smiled with satisfaction. "You did well to come back to my side, Agnes. When this is all over, you'll receive a good reward. And after? What will happen to Lily? That's no longer your problem. You've done your part." The coldness with which Richard spoke about the fate of a 4-year-old child made Agnes feel nauseous, but she maintained her composure, knowing that every word was being recorded. At 10 in the morning, the parade officially began. Catherine walked slowly along with hundreds of other participants, carrying her precious baby and praying that the plan would work. She could feel eyes watching her movements, knew she was being watched. On Main Street, when the parade made its first stop for blessings, 2 men discreetly approached Catherine. She pretended not to notice, protecting the doll as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Excuse me, ma'am," said one of them. "Could you show us the baby? It's sleeping so quietly." It was the crucial moment. Catherine looked around as if confused and a little scared. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" "We're family. We recognize the child." At that moment, before the men could act, plainclothes police officers who were disguised in the crowd approached. The operation had been perfectly coordinated. The moment the kidnappers tried to grab what they believed was Lily, they would be arrested in the act. "Police, hands where I can see them." The ensuing confusion was exactly what they expected. The two men tried to flee, but were immediately restrained. A third man, waiting in the town square near Margaret, was also arrested when he tried to approach her. At the cafe, Richard realized something was wrong when his phone rang with news of his men's arrest. He stood up abruptly, but found Chief Miller and two officers blocking the exit. "Richard Sterling, you are under arrest for attempted kidnapping, conspiracy, and trafficking of minors." "This is absurd. I did nothing. We have everything on tape," said the chief, showing the device Agnes was wearing. "Your own words condemn you." Agnes stood up from the table, trembling, but with visible relief on her face. "It's over," she murmured. "It's finally over." At Dr. Evans's family farm, Lily played happily with the animals, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding in Willow Creek. Sarah watched the girl laugh as she fed the chickens, feeling a peace she hadn't experienced in weeks. At 2 in the afternoon, when they received the call confirming that Richard and all his accomplices were arrested, Sarah finally told Lily what was happening. "My princess, remember how the adults were worried about some important things?" "I remember. That's why I couldn't play alone in the yard. Well, the important things have been sorted out. We don't have to be afraid anymore." "Afraid of what?" Sarah knelt in front of Lily, choosing her words carefully. "There was a bad man who wanted to take you away from our family, but the police arrested him, and now you are safe forever." Lily's eyes widened. "A bad man wanted to take me? Where to?" "Far away from us, but he couldn't, and he never will again." "And now can I go back to playing in the yard?" "You can, my love. You can play wherever you want." When they returned to Willow Creek in the late afternoon, they found the whole family gathered at the Kensingtons' house, including Agnes, who was visibly emotional but still hesitant about her acceptance in the group. "Lily," said Catherine, hugging the girl tightly, "did you miss us? I missed you a lot, but I saw ponies and chickens. It was so cool." Agnes approached shyly. "Lily, can I talk to you?" The girl looked at the woman who had once been a source of fear in her life. But at 4, with the unique wisdom of children, she replied, "You can, Aunt Agnes. I wanted to apologize to you. I did very ugly things when you lived with me, and it was wrong." Lily thought for a moment. "Were you scared too?" The unexpected question made Agnes start to cry. "I was, my dear, very scared." "Then it's okay. When people are scared, sometimes they do bad things." Lily's capacity for forgiveness deeply touched everyone present. Even Margaret, who had suffered for years because of Agnes's actions, felt something soften in her heart. "Thank you for protecting me in the end," Margaret said to Agnes. "It was the least I could do after everything." That night, as Lily slept peacefully in her room, finally without fear, finally truly safe, the adults talked about the future. Richard was in jail, his trafficking network was being dismantled, and Agnes had agreed to cooperate fully with the justice system in exchange for a reduced sentence. "And now?" Margaret asked. "How do we organize our family from now on?" It was a complex question, because everyone had changed during that ordeal. But it was also a question full of hope, because they could finally build a life without fear, without threats, only with the love that they all felt for a special girl who had united their lives in an unexpected and wonderful way. 3 months had passed since Richard's arrest, and life in Willow Creek had found a new rhythm. Lily's unconventional family was working better than anyone could have imagined, but now they faced a different challenge: how to legally formalize such a unique situation. Robert had spent weeks studying legal precedents and consulting with family law experts from across the country. On that September morning, he finally had a concrete proposal to present to everyone. "I've found a solution," he announced in the Kensington's living room, where the entire family was gathered for another of their weekly meetings. "But it will require full cooperation from all of you." Lily was sitting on the rug, playing with building blocks that Margaret had brought from Chicago, completely oblivious to the legal complexity her existence created. "What kind of solution?" Arthur asked. "A triple shared custody, with Margaret as the primary biological mother, Sarah as the legal adoptive mother, and you two as the permanent foster family." Catherine frowned. "Is that legally possible?" "It's unprecedented, but possible, especially considering the exceptional circumstances of the case. The judge in charge is willing to consider the proposal because there are precedents for shared custody between people who are not married." Margaret spoke up. "And how would it work in practice?" "Lily would have 3 official residences. She would spend part of the week with each family, but everyone would have equal rights over important decisions like education, health, and her future." Sarah was visibly nervous. "And what if someday someone changes their mind? If one of us wants sole custody? That's why we need a very detailed agreement, one that primarily protects Lily's interests. No changes could be made without the consent of all parties and judicial approval." At that moment, Lily approached with her latest drawing, a huge house with many rooms and all her mommies and daddy living together. "Look what I drew. Our giant house where everyone lives together." The innocence of the solution proposed by Lily made everyone laugh. But it also brought to light an idea that had been whispered for weeks. "What if the solution were simpler?" Catherine suggested unexpectedly. "What if we really all lived together?" The silence that followed was one of genuine surprise. "What do you mean?" Margaret asked. "The property next to ours has been for sale for months. We could buy it, knock down the walls separating the lots, and build a house big enough for everyone." Arthur looked at his wife with admiration. "Have you seriously thought about this?" "I have. Lily would be happier having all of us around all the time. And we would be too." Sarah was clearly moved by the idea. "Would it be like a family commune?" "It would be like a big family," Catherine corrected. "Everyone would have their private space, but we would share the common areas and the responsibility for Lily." Robert smiled. "From a legal standpoint, it would be much simpler. A single residence, everyone as legal guardians, and Lily growing up in a stable and defined family structure." The idea gained momentum throughout the conversation. Margaret, who had spent years living alone in Chicago, admitted she missed having a family around. Sarah, who had always struggled financially to raise Lily alone, was excited by the prospect of having constant support. And Arthur and Catherine saw in the proposal a chance to finally have the big family they had always dreamed of. "But what about your jobs?" Sarah asked Margaret. "I can work remotely. I was a marketing consultant in Chicago, but most of my clients would accept virtual meetings. And honestly, after everything we've been through, priorities have changed, and I can expand the construction company." Arthur said, "Willow Creek is growing. There's demand for new projects. It would even be good for business." Lily, who had listened to the conversation without fully understanding, asked the most important question. "Does this mean I'll never have to choose which mum to stay with again?" "It means exactly that, my dear," Catherine replied, hugging her. In the weeks that followed, the community house project became a family obsession. They spent afternoons drawing up floor plans, discussing the layout of the rooms, imagining what the garden where Lily could play freely would look like. Margaret suggested that each adult have their own suite on the upper floor, with a shared living room. The ground floor would be entirely common: a large kitchen, a big dining room, a recreation area, and a special room for Lily that was both private and connected to the family areas. "And how about a library?" Sarah suggested. "Lily loves stories." "And a music room," Margaret added. "I always wanted her to learn piano." Arthur, pragmatic as ever, focused on the technical aspects. "We'll need an efficient heating system, 2 cars in the garage, and a well-planned service area." But it was Catherine who had the most special idea. "What if we made a memory garden, a place where Lily can plant a tree for each important phase of her life?" Construction began in October, with Arthur personally overseeing every detail. Lily visited the site daily, fascinated to see her giant house take shape. She had chosen the colors for her room, light blue with yellow details, and insisted there be a large window from which she could see the garden. During this period, something unexpected and wonderful happened. Agnes, who had been released to perform community service instead of serving prison time, asked to visit them. "I'm not here to ask to be part of the family," she said humbly. "I know I don't deserve that after everything I've done, but I'd like to know if I can. If I can sometimes help with something." "What kind of help?" Margaret asked, still cautious. "I can cook well, I know how to garden, I can sew. I could help with the chores in the new house if you'd let me." It was Lily who made the decision. "Can Aunt Agnes come for lunch with us on Sundays?" The 4-year-old's suggestion became a tradition. Every Sunday, Agnes would prepare a special lunch for the family as a way of repaying the forgiveness she had received. In December, the house was ready. It was even more beautiful than they had imagined, spacious, cozy, with large windows that let natural light into every room. The garden had been carefully planned with play areas, a small orchard, and the special corner where Lily planted her first tree, an apple tree that, according to tradition, would bear sweet fruit for the whole family. On moving day, when all the families had permanently settled under the same roof, Lily made a statement that perfectly summed up what everyone was feeling. "Now our family is complete." That night, during the first dinner in the new house, Robert showed up with the finalized shared custody papers. Officially, Lily now has 3 legal mothers and 1 father. It's the first case of its kind approved in this state. "And what does that mean exactly?" Sarah asked. "It means that if something happens to one of you, the others automatically assume full responsibility. It means Lily will have the right to inherit from all of you. And most importantly, it means that no one can ever again question your right to be a family." While the adults celebrated the legal victory, Lily was in her new room, organizing her toys and looking out the window at the garden illuminated by the moonlight. For the first time in her life, she knew with absolute certainty that she was home. Not just in a house, but in a family that loved her unconditionally and would never abandon her. But fate still had one last surprise in store for that very special family, a surprise that would come in the form of a discovery that would forever change everyone's understanding of the true meaning of family love. 6 months had passed since the family moved into the new house, and life had found a perfect rhythm. Lily, now 5, was about to start school, and everyone was actively involved in the preparations for this new phase. On that March morning, while Catherine was organizing Lily's school supplies, she found something unexpected among the documents Robert had delivered months earlier. It was a folder that had not been opened, marked "Additional Documents, Richard Sterling Investigation." Curious, Catherine opened the folder and found detailed reports on the baby trafficking network that Richard had run. But it was a specific document that took her breath away, a list of babies who had been kidnapped in the last 5 years, with photos and detailed information. On page 3 of the list, there was a photo that made her heart stop. It was a baby she recognized immediately, even though it was a 5-year-old photo. But it wasn't Lily. "Arthur!" she shouted, calling her husband urgently. When Arthur came to the office, he found Catherine trembling, holding the document with hands that could barely stay steady. "What happened?" he asked, worried. "Look at this photo," she said, pointing to the image on the list. "Do you recognize this baby?" Arthur looked closely and his expression changed drastically. It looks just like Lily as a baby. But it's not her, is it?" "Read the name," Catherine whispered. Arthur read aloud, "Gabriel Sterling, age at the time of kidnapping, 8 months. Date, September 2018. The silence that followed was absolute. They were looking at a photo of another of Richard's children, Lily's brother, who had been kidnapped even before her. "My God," Arthur murmured, "Lily has a brother. And according to this document, he was still missing at the time of Richard's arrest." Catherine continued reading the report. Gabriel had disappeared from a hospital in Chicago when Margaret went to visit him after a hernia surgery. Richard had used the hospital chaos to kidnap his own son, later claiming that the child had suffered medical complications and died. "Margaret has believed for 5 years that she lost her son," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. "She doesn't know that Gabriel is alive." "Are you sure he's alive?" "According to this report, yes. He was sold to a family in Denver who believed they were adopting legally. When the network was dismantled, they discovered the child had been kidnapped." Arthur sat down heavily in the chair. "We have to tell Margaret." "How? How do you tell a mother that the son she has mourned for 5 years is alive and has been raised by another family?" At that moment, Lily entered the office looking for Catherine. "Mommy Catherine, can I help organize my colored pencils?" Seeing the adult's expressions, she immediately realized something was wrong. "Why are you sad?" Arthur knelt in front of her. "Lily, do you remember me telling you that you have a birth father who was a very bad person?" "I remember. The Uncle Richard who got arrested." "Well, we found out you have a little brother." Lily's eyes lit up. "A brother? Like me? Like you? He was also separated from Mommy Margaret when he was a baby. Where is he now?" Catherine knelt beside Arthur. "He's living with a very good family in another city, but maybe we can meet him soon. Does he know I exist?" "No, my love, he doesn't know." Lily thought for a moment with adult-like seriousness. "He must miss Mommy Margaret, just like I did when I didn't know where she was." The simplicity and wisdom of Lily's observation cut the two adults to the heart. When they told Margaret the discovery that afternoon, her reaction was one of complete shock, first disbelief, then desperate hope, and finally a cry that lasted for almost an hour. "My boy is alive," she repeated between sobs. "My Gabriel is alive." Sarah, who was present during the revelation, held Margaret's hands. "We'll bring him home." "But what about the family that raised him?" Margaret asked. "They must love him too. They were victims as much as we were." Robert was called urgently to advise on the legal aspects of the situation. The family that had raised Gabriel, the Parkers, and from Denver, were also good people who had been deceived by Richard. They genuinely believed they were adopting an orphan. "It's an extremely delicate situation," Robert explained. "Gabriel is 5 years old, has been raised by the Parkers since he was a baby. He considers them his parents. We can't just rip him away from there." "So what do we do?" Margaret asked, desperate. "First, we make contact with the family, we explain the situation, and we try to find a solution that is best for Gabriel, just as we did with Lily." The call to the Parkers was one of the most difficult conversations Robert had ever mediated. On the other end of the line, Martha Parker cried upon learning that the son she had been raising for 5 years had been kidnapped. "We didn't know anything," she repeated. "We love Gabriel as if he were our own son. How are we going to explain to him that we are not?" "You are his parents," Margaret interrupted, who was listening to the conversation. "You raised him, loved him, took care of him. I just want to meet him. I want to know if he's okay." Margaret's generosity deeply touched Martha Parker. Would you like to come visit us, to meet Gabriel?" 2 weeks later, the entire extended family made the trip to Denver. Lily was especially anxious to meet her brother, having spent days imagining what he would be like. The Parkers' house was simple but cozy. When the door opened, Gabriel appeared, hiding behind his adoptive mother. He was the male version of Lily. Same eyes, same face shape, same shy way of observing strangers. "Gabriel," Martha said gently, "remember Mommy told you that you have a little sister. She came to visit you." Lily slowly approached her brother. "Hi, Gabriel. I'm Lily." "Hi," he replied shyly. "Do you want to play with me? I brought some toys." In a few minutes, the children were playing in the yard as if they had known each other for years. It was impossible to deny the instant bond between them. During the visit, which lasted 3 days, the two families talked at length about the future. The Parkers were wonderful people who obviously loved Gabriel deeply, but they also understood Margaret's right to know her biological son. "We don't want to take Gabriel from you," Margaret said. "You are his parents. But we would like to be part of his life too. And we would like Gabriel to know his origins," replied John Parker. "He always asks about his birth family." The solution they found was similar to Lily's, but adapted to the circumstances. Gabriel would continue to live with the Parkers in Denver, but would spend holidays and long breaks with the family from Willow Creek. The two families would maintain constant contact, and when Gabriel was older, he could choose where he wanted to live. "And can I go visit Gabriel too?" Lily asked. "Of course you can," Martha Parker replied. "You're siblings. Siblings should know each other well." On the last day of the visit, Gabriel asked a question that touched everyone's hearts. "Lily, do you think we can be brother and sister even if we live far apart?" "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "Family isn't just who lives together, it's who loves us." On the journey back to Willow Creek, Margaret was at peace for the first time in 5 years. She had found both of her children, both were being loved and well cared for, and now she was a part of both of their lives. "You know what impresses me the most?" Sarah commented during the trip. "What?" Catherine asked. "How Lily and Gabriel instantly clicked, not just physically but in personality. They are both generous, caring, quick to forgive." "It's because they were raised with love," Arthur said. "True love always produces children with good hearts." 6 months later, on the first anniversary of the big house, the whole family was gathered for a special party. Gabriel had come to spend the July holidays, and for the first time, Lily was experiencing having a real brother. Agnes had prepared a special feast. The Parkers had come from Denver to participate in the celebration, and even Robert was present with his family. "I want to make a toast," Arthur said, raising his glass of grape juice. "A toast to the most unlikely and most perfect family that has ever existed. To family," everyone repeated in unison. Lily, now 6.5, looked around the table full of people who loved her. 3 mothers, a father, a brother, 2 families, friends who had become family, and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. "Can I say something?" she asked. "Of course, my dear," Margaret replied. "I think I'm the luckiest girl in the whole world, because when I was little and alone, you found me, and when Gabriel was far away, you found him too, and now we are a giant family full of love." Lily's words perfectly summed up the extraordinary journey they had all traveled. From an abandoned girl begging for food at the Willow Creek market, She had become the center of a network of love that grew and expanded to include many more people than anyone could have imagined. As the children played in the garden that night, planting another tree to commemorate Gabriel's arrival in the family, the adults watched with full hearts. "Who would have thought," Catherine murmured, "that a 4-year-old girl would teach us the true meaning of family?" "She didn't just teach us about family," Margaret corrected. "She taught us about unconditional love, forgiveness, second chances, and especially about how small acts of kindness can transform entire lives." And so, in the historic town of Willow Creek, a family born of coincidence and cemented by unconditional love continued to grow, proving that the best miracles are those that happen when generous hearts decide to make room for more love. Always more love, without limits and without conditions. Lily's story had begun with tears and abandonment, but it ended with laughter, unity, and the certainty that sometimes the most perfect families are those that fate builds with people who chose to love without reserve a child who needed a home. And they lived happily ever after, not because they had no more challenges, but because they learned that together they could overcome any obstacle, face any storm, and build a future where love would always win. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.